You were told about these freak offs and secret tapes and baby oil laced with drugs and drinking a drink. And now I woke up and there's five guys on me and all this stuff. It seems like you guys just can't admit, wow, I got duped. It was nothing like that. If you want to get somebody, you can just go and get them and we'll make it fit. We'll make it stick. Doesn't matter what the charges are, we'll make them fit. Rico! Where's the Rico? Or as my man Uta Ongo says, is it Rico or is it Frico? And that's the conversation we're going to be having today. All right. So we've gone through a couple of the predicate acts already. We went through bribery, we went through extortion, and now we're going to go through kidnapping. All right. So as you guys already know, the way we do it on this channel is we do a deep dive. So we break down basically the charge. And while you're putting up the kidnapping statute on the screen there, guys, I just want to give you guys a refresher of what the importance of these predicate acts are. You have to have at least two predicate acts in a period of 10 years, in a span of 10 years, in order for the RICO charge to even start. Like, in order for the wheels to start turning on that RICO charge, you have to be able to prove a pattern of racketeering. And that pattern of racketeering is at least two predicate acts in the span of 10 years. And that's how they have that pattern. Now, again, guys, do not get it confused. That's not the only element that has to be proven. There are other elements that have to be proven. There is organization, there is enterprise, there is a purpose or a common goal. These are all elements that have to be proven. And also, most importantly, these predicate acts have to tie. So these predicate acts, if you break one of these laws that are part of the 35 predicate acts, it has to tie into what the purpose of the enterprise is. So it can't just be, I kidnap somebody for the fun of it. It has to be, I kidnap somebody to support the purpose of the ultimate goal of this enterprise. And everybody got to be working towards that goal, or at least all of the co-conspirators. So now that we have this up, here's a statute for kidnapping. Again, guys, we do it on this channel correct. We bring up the exact statute, in this case, 18 U.S. Code 1201, and then we read it to you or read it together so that everybody can understand what this is. So, C, can you just read the beginning part of this? Honestly, the beginning part is the only part that actually matters in this particular charge for Sean Puffy Combs. It's the traditional kidnapping that we would all think what kidnapping is. So if you could just read this, that'll be helpful.
U.S. Code 1201 Kidnapping. Whoever unlawfully seizes, confines, unvigiles, decoys, kidnaps, abducts, or carries away and holds for ransom or reward or otherwise any person except in the case of a minor by the parent thereof.
When the person is willingly transported in interstate or foreign commerce, regardless, blah, blah, blah. And that is a weird word. I don't think I've seen that word before. Invigils.
It means persuade someone to do something by means of deception or flattery.
Okay, gotcha. That's interesting. I mean, that doesn't apply here, but it's interesting to know that that's what that word means. All right. So that's what kidnapping is defined as. There are two instances in which kidnapping has been alleged in this particular case. Okay. The first instance in which kidnapping has been alleged is the video. I mean, everybody's seen the video. That's how they started the trial. They started the trial with the video, talking about the video. And you'll hear on the news a lot of foolishness saying stuff like, oh, just look at the video. He dragged her back to the room. Oh my goodness, please put something in the comment section if either that's what you've heard or that's what you believe. If you've seen the video, she was not dragged back into the room. She was dragged for 1 second, maybe 2 seconds. She was not dragged back into any room. Actually, if you've seen the video, when he took the bag from her and when he took the phone, I think it was the phone in the bag, but it was definitely the bag. The room was all the way at the end of the hall. It was all the way, not only at the end of the hall, but around the corner of the hall. They had like a corner suite. She was not dragged back to the room. She was dragged maybe 6 feet, 7 feet, maybe. And you got to remember how far you're dragged actually also matters. All right. So she wasn't dragged back to the room. Okay, guys. She was dragged for 1 to 2 seconds. The room was like 50 feet, maybe 100 feet away. It's hard for me to say because I'm just looking at a video just like you guys are, but it's clearly all the way at the end of the hall. If you guys have ever stayed in a hotel room, just think you get off the elevator and your room is all the way at the end of the hall, or maybe even around the corner at the end of the hall, and then maybe to the end of the next hall. I really wish people would stop saying that because they're just adding extra stuff onto that. Okay. Some people might say, but Jay, she was dragged in the direction of the room. Still, she wasn't dragged long enough for that to be considered kidnapping, reasonably considered kidnapping. It was an assault and it was a drag for a second, maybe a second and a half. It was assault, and that's all. She was also allowed, once he dropped the bags in the room, she also got up. If you guys watch the video that we saw in court, that video is out there. I think it's like 10 plus minutes. You can see once he drags her right to the corner of the hall between the elevator, where the elevator intersects with the hallway, the elevator corridor where that intersects with the hallway, there's a little corner there, and the camera angle switches. And then you can see very clearly her turn around and start cussing him out, saying something like, "What are you doing? What's wrong with you?" or something like that. He then leaves her, goes and drops the bag, and then he comes back and she's already going to pick up the phone, and he starts cussing her out, and eventually he throws a vase at her that misses. All right. These are all important things because any reasonable juror is not going to say that that's kidnapping. Nobody reasonably is going to say that's kidnapping. And this is the important thing. And when we get into drug trafficking, you have to understand this as well. You may technically be doing something that's against the law, but there are a lot of other factors, or you may technically be outside of the parameters of the law, but there are a lot of other factors that have to happen in order to get you convicted for doing what you're doing outside of the law. One of those things is intent. That, for example, is the difference between first degree murder, second degree murder, manslaughter, self defense. All of these, in all of these situations, somebody was unalived. Okay. But all of these charges are all dependent on what your intentions were, what your knowledge was at the time, and a whole bunch of other factors that a reasonable jury has to come up with. Okay. So unaliving someone doesn't just equate to you spend your life in prison, because technically you unalive somebody and we can technically put that into the parameters of the law, right? What happens is, okay, you unalive somebody, and now we look at the circumstances that go into that. Okay. So the intent here, the circumstances that go into this charge would be that, can you pull that up again, guys? Thank you. So again, seizing, confining, right, kidnapping altogether, right, and this is the person is willfully transported in interstate or foreign commerce, regardless of whether the person was alive, whether that was happening. Can we get some elements in case law up on the screen here? Perfect. Thank you. All right. So here are some key elements as it pertains to federal kidnapping. Okay. So we've got four key elements here. Number one is movement or confinement. So as he was dragging her, there was a little bit movement there. There was no confinement though. And the reason why there's no confinement is because he dragged her for 1, maybe 2 seconds and then walked away. As you can see here, movement is required, but does not have to be substantial. And this is absolutely true in these terms, right? She was moved, but not substantially moved. Now, this was in California, and I did speak to a lawyer that understands California law, and she actually wasn't moved far enough for that to be considered kidnapping under California law, and that's where this took place. But remember, we're in federal court, so you also want to look at the federal law as well. So moving somebody a short distance could count, right? It could qualify as something that could be basically moving them away from leaving. But we're going to get into a few things after this that are very important. The next one is interfering with liberty. So the act must significantly interfere with the victim's ability to move freely or seek help. This did not. This did not. And again, like we said, You might technically break the law, but intent matters, and circumstance matters, and context matters. And there is a reason why the words reasonable is used when finding people guilty or not guilty. It's what you should consider reasonable. And reasonable, a reasonable person will not consider this kidnapping because it was not interfering with her liberty. He sat down on a bench. He yelled at her. He argued with her. She was able to use the phone to call security, to call help. He threw a vase at her. He dragged her for 1 second. Call it 3 seconds, why don't you? Right? Call it 3 seconds and 6 feet. Still about 60 feet away from the hotel room, right? So this is not interference with liberty. It's not significant interference with liberty, we should say, because the person was able to move freely within 3 seconds. Okay. And obviously, number three, crossing state lines, but that did not happen. And then intent, right? There was no confinement or intent like that. There was no intent to kidnap. There was no intent for ransom. There was no intent to facilitate another crime. There was no intent to inflict harm or terror because you let the person go and sat down and started yelling at them and arguing with them, right? And there were no interference with legal rights or custody when the person was able to get on the phone, and you can see her go and use the phone to call downstairs to be like, this guy's drunk and drugged up and out of his mind. Come and talk to him. Right? She didn't go back into the room. She actually left. Now, there's another thing that wasn't on the screen here. The other thing that wasn't on the screen was the simple fact that she wasn't more in danger when he dragged her than before he dragged her, right? So, for example, if you grab somebody and throw them into a back of a van, they're more in a different position, more in danger than when you first started grabbing them and moving them till after, because now they're in your possession. They're in the back of a van, right? He didn't move her to a van or a motorcycle or drag her from up top the stairs down to the back of the downstairs in the basement, or from out of the closet and throw her back into a closet in which you would be at less liberty or more in danger of this. He dragged her for 2 seconds, 3 seconds. I promised I'd give you guys 3 seconds. 3 seconds from the elevator door to the corner of the hall, which is still about 60 feet from the room. A reasonable person would not consider this kidnapping. The only people who consider this kidnapping are people who hate Puff and just want him to go down and try to make this square peg fit in a round circle. And this is not how the law works. The law was not made for you just to manipulate it for the people that you don't like so that you can try to trap them into whatever you believe. We have one more screen to put up. Let's put up that last screen, please. If you guys don't believe me, please look up this. It's case law, United States versus McGrady. Okay. It emphasizes that movement need not be substantial in terms of distance, but must significantly change the victim's circumstances. This is what I was talking about, being more in danger and stuff like that. It has to significantly change the victim's circumstances. You drag them from outside of the closet, you throw them back into the closet. You pick up a person from the street, you throw them into a back of a van. You pick up the person, you drag them into a room and close the door. That's significantly changing the circumstance of the victim. And here it gives an example such as isolating them or making escape more difficult. He did not do that. So you can go and look up this case law for yourself. But the reason why we have precedent and case law is because we're not trying to move the goalpost every time we try to convict somebody that we don't like. That's not how the legal system works. We're not out here trying to move the goalpost every time we're trying to convict somebody that we don't like. It intention matters. Context matters. Something that's reasonable or unreasonable matters. All of these things factor into the parameters of the law. So just because you might be in a gray area or be slightly outside of the parameters of the law, guys, you need to understand that the bottom line is you cannot just say, I'm going to get this person on technicalities because I don't like them. That's not how this stuff works. I'm sorry if you don't like Puff. Nobody asked you. I'll be real. I'm sorry if you don't like him, but nobody asked you if you liked him or not. We just asked, is he actually guilty of the crimes that he is being charged for? We didn't ask if you like him. We didn't ask if you were abused before, or if you were a victim of domestic violence, or if you like his music, or if you like anything about this kind of stuff. We didn't ask all those questions. We didn't ask if you like his lifestyle or the people he chooses to sleep with or the things he does in his bedroom. All we asked is he guilty of the crimes that he is being charged for. One of these predicate acts is kidnapping in RICO. And it's very clear that a reasonable person that is not just overwhelmed or has a different agenda with their hate for this guy, if a reasonable person can really say that he kidnapped Cassie when she literally went home that day, and all of these other elements that we discussed, no, none of them exist. Now let's go to Capricorn Clark, the woman who perjured herself on a stand multiple times. Okay. She said she was kidnapped. She said that when Puff found out that Cassie was cheating on him, he went crazy and he banged on her door and he had a gun in his hand and he says, "We're going to kill this N word. Let's go." And she was scared because he was waving around a gun, and she went in the car and she immediately called Cuddy and told him, "Oh, Puff is coming to see you." Cassie gave him the address. He found out you guys are together. Cuddy was confused because Cuddy thought that Cassie and Puff were over. Later on, he realized that she was playing both of them, as he testified to on the stand in cross-examination. I believe it was Brian Steele. It might have been Agnifilo that said she was playing both of you guys, wasn't she? And he said, yeah, she was playing both of us. So he realized later on that they were both being played. However, at the time, he was surprised. So if you guys remember, Capricorn Clark, she literally testified on the stand saying she felt like she was Puff's protector. If you feel like you're somebody's protector, wouldn't you feel like that person might have some love and affinity for you and feel like you're the person that's looking out for them? And wouldn't you be upset if you found out that your lady or your man were cheating on you? Wouldn't you get very, very upset if one of your trusted advisors, one of the people you thought were closest to you, that describes themselves as "I thought I was that person's protector," if they were in on it? If they were in on it, they're going on hikes together. This is a real thing. Capricorn Clark also got Cassie a burner phone to talk to Cuddy in secret, right? She said, "Hey, we have bad boy phones. These are all bad boy phones. And the company can always look into these phones and see text messages and phone calls. They'll get the bill." So Capricorn Clark brought Cassie to Best Buy to buy a burner phone to cheat on Puff with Cuddy. So you'll be upset and angry too. And I don't think that any of us should be waving around guns and banging on doors and be like, "Let's go, we're going to kill this N word." But that's what happened. So she went into the car. That's what the prosecution is trying to say is kidnapping. On cross examination, she was asked, "Was the gun ever pointed at you?" No. She was left in the car when Puff and his associate went into Cuddy's house. Not broke into Cuddy's house because there was no forced entry. So either Puff had a key or the door was left open. Maybe Puff had a key. He was dating Cassie, so maybe he gave Cassie the key and Cassie gave Puff the key. But either way, there was no forced entry, so we're not going to call it a break-in because there was nothing broken into. He just opened the door. So it was trespassing. Okay. Capricorn Clark is in the car with her cell phone. She's in the car with her cell phone with the doors unlocked. I repeat, she's in the car with her cell phone with the doors unlocked. And she's making calls. She calls Lauren London complaining about something to do with mountain lions. That's the testimony. She mentioned mountain lions. Now, my idea, because she says she doesn't remember exactly what that conversation was, but my guess is Lauren London said, "Well, why don't you just leave?" And she said, "I'm scared of mountain lions." Okay. Okay. Remember, she perjured herself on the stand multiple times. One of the times she said specifically about this incident is that they saw Cuddy's car and they started chasing him around the Hollywood Hills and following him all around the Hollywood Hills. Now, Cuddy didn't testify to being in a car chase. He didn't testify to that at all. And Capricorn Clark was confronted by the Google Maps of that area. And there's a bunch of dead ends. I used to live in LA very briefly, only for 6 months. But I drove in Hollywood Hills all the time. There are a lot of dead ends in certain places because there's a lot of like mansions and private properties and private roads and stuff like that that you just can't go down that part, and a lot of gates and stuff like that. So she was confronted with a map and they said, a chase? Where? This road is a dead end and this road is a dead end and this road is a dead end. And her excuse was, well, you just must not live in LA. You must not have gone to LA, or you must not have grown up in LA. You just must not know LA. Um, Fair enough. But again, going back to her testimony, apparently she was just afraid of mountain lions, and that's why she didn't want to get out of the car, because she was brought to Daniel and the lion's den. What are we talking about? No reasonable person thinks that's kidnapping. Again, it's because either you're pushing a narrative or you hate Puff. Either way is just disgusting, because you are affecting the rest of our security and our future, because you're pushing a narrative in which you're supporting, if you want to get somebody, you can just go and get them and we'll make it fit. We'll make it stick. Doesn't matter what the charges are, we'll make them fit. We don't find drugs, we'll plant drugs. Remember that, guys? Do you remember that from the OJ trial? Do you remember that from the Furman tapes? Why don't you guys go look that up? That Mark Furman said on tape, on recording, if I don't find drugs, I'll plant drugs. You think he's the only police officer to have that attitude in the history of America? You think there have been prosecutors that have said in the history of America, you know what? We're going to force this. We're going to make it work. We're going to get this person. That's what you guys are promoting. I was shocked the first day, that I had a police officer on the stand, and I was questioning that police officer, and I asked him thinking he was going to tell the truth, and he lied under oath. I was so shocked. I swear to you, I knew police officers lied. I knew that. I'm from the hood. But to lie under oath, and it happened again and again and again. The first time, probably I think it was around 2012. Actually, we were just looking at some of the photos of that day that I was in court the other day with my team, because we were discussing this stuff. That was the first time I actually even had a police officer tell the truth on the stand. Now, I'm not dragging police officers. I hope that police officers aren't still doing that. But I'm just letting you know that to give this sort of credence, to make charges stick and look for somehow, some way to fit this square peg in a round circle, you look like a fool. If you're one of those people, you look like a fool. And it really is so revealing, because, like, guys, remember, none of these tapes that the jurors were showing came from Puff's devices, his cameras, all of this stuff. All of this stuff came from Cassie's cameras. You were told about these freak offs and secret tapes and baby oil laced with drugs and drinking a drink. And now I woke up and there's 5 guys on me and all this stuff. And it just seems like you guys, and I'm talking to you, not the people who are here for the truth. I'm talking to you guys who are here to hate. It seems like you guys just can't admit it. Wow, I got duped. I can admit it. I can admit I was misled. It seems like you guys just can't admit, wow, I got duped. It was nothing like that. And now I'm trying to just pick up the pieces and push these pieces of the puzzle that don't actually fit just to paint the picture that I want to paint so I still get whatever I thought I was going to get. You're not thinking about your loved ones when this can happen to one of the richest black men in America. What's going to happen to you? You're not thinking about your loved ones. You're not thinking about my loved ones. You're just thinking about your narrative and whatever you're trying to push. And it's not something that I'm about to get behind. I want to back the truth. We are a leader channel here, and we're backing the truth. This is bigger than Puff. You are an advocate for a legal system that can say, I want to get you, so I'm going to get you. And I really pray to God that you are not one of them that have to face the consequences of trying to shape a society like that. As I always sign off these videos, guys, go and be great. You know greatness is a choice, and it happens decision by decision every single day. Do not put off what you can do today to tomorrow. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one.